Welcome to the Fantasy Audiobook. American Comics. Magic Engine, Opening Homelander Template. Chapter 21. Look at the banner that picks up the magic engine like a treasure. Ivan smiled and encouraged him to get up. Just open it. No one can control what will open in it. It's completely random. It is good. Banner heard it. Put your big hand on the cover of the magic engine and twist it hard. Immediately, in the dark night, a bright blue light lit up. Light shone from Banner's chin to his face, like a ghost. But Banner's eyes were always on the inside of the magic engine, not even blinking. After a while, the bright blue light gradually disappeared. The mysterious blue magic energy in the magic engine gradually gathered above the engine, and finally condensed into an object. At first glance, it looks like a pair of pants. But from Ivan's point of view, this is a pair of pants. Feeling the information from the system, Ivan almost laughed. Banner looked at Ivan, then looked at the things above and asked, "Ivan, what is this?" Ivan smiled. "You'll know when you touch it." Hearing this, Banner reached out his hand without hesitation and slowly touched the item on the engine. At the moment of touch, the item on the engine seemed to bounce. Then it turned into a streamer and flew towards Banner. At the same time, the magic engine also shattered directly into the starlight and dissipated. After the streamer flew over Banner, it even shocked Banner. He touched his body immediately, but found nothing unusual. Next moment, Banner was stunned for a moment. He could feel a difference in himself. Banner flipped the blanket over him. A pair of brown trousers appeared on him. Banner touched his pants with a puzzled expression. A pair of pants? No. Ivan shook his head with certainty. This is a pair of pants that won't be damaged by your transformation. Nano-textile pants in another parallel universe. Someone who can also transform can't bear the trouble of not having pants after recovery, so he found someone to create a pair of high-tech pants. Ivan probably told Banner about the function of the pants. It probably means that these pants can't be worn badly, and they can be used as family heirlooms. Okay. Banner touched his pants. At least it solves my privacy problem. Set the blanket aside. Banner picked up another magic engine again and prepared to turn it on. Holding the exquisite magic engine in his hand, Banner touched it carefully this time, and was suddenly amazed. Better than a work of art. After that, Banner turned on the magic engine like a sneak attack. Seaside at night. The bright blue light lit up again. As the engine was turned on, that blue mysterious energy flowed together again. After a while, they came together again. Appears above the magic engine. Still a miniature version. Ivan looked at it, and it was a card. At the same time, the message of the reward came to his mind. Qingshin Formula. If you study and practice this formula more, you can calm your mind and control your mind. Mantra. It was the first time Ivan had seen such a reward. He looked carefully. The function of this formula, to put it bluntly, is to make people calm down and not easily get angry. If you are familiar with it for a long time, you can control your temper. For ordinary people, it's useless. But not necessarily for Banner. What is this? Banner stretched out his hand and slowly took the card. But since the card did not respond after this contact, and the engine had disappeared, he asked curiously. You just crush it. When Banner heard this, his fingers tightened slightly. The card seemed to be able to sense Banner's intentions, and it instantly shattered into starlight and entered Banner's brain. After half a sound, Banner opened his eyes. Ivan then explained. Practice more, it can help you control your temper, and when you are angry, meditating on it can gradually calm down. Banner's eyes glowed with gratitude. If the previous pants were only used for a small purpose, then this formula is too useful for Hulk. Although ordinary people don't need it, Banner has the difficulties of Banner. More importantly, with this formula, Banner at least has a direction for his efforts. If it was before, he didn't know how to work hard to control his temper. Even looking for the so-called major event, it is only a disguised increase in the upper limit of temper. That's not effort at all. Looking at Banner's grateful eyes, Ivan waved his hand, indicating a small matter. The last one is waiting for you. Heard. Banner nodded solemnly. He reached for the magic engine. This time, his attitude was much more determined than last time. But at the same time, there was a lot of awe in his eyes. Whether the last reward is useful or not depends on what the magic engine will give him. Take the magic engine in your hand. Banner closed his eyes and stroked it carefully. It was the last magic engine he cherished. After half a sound, without even opening his eyes, Banner unscrewed the magic engine. Another blue light scattered. Wait until the blue light fades away. Banner opened his eyes slowly. But this time, he didn't directly see what was on the magic engine. Instead, look at Ivan's expression. Because he knew that the magic engine was given to him by Ivan, and Ivan also knew the reward in it after it was driven out. As a scientist, he still knew these findings. But then, he quickly dismissed those thoughts. Because after seeing Ivan's warm and jade-like smile, Banner's face flashed a pleasant smile. He looked down sharply at the magic engine. As predicted, there was a different card floating on it. From the outside, there is a pattern on the surface of that card. The content of the pattern is a man wearing a fur coat of a beast, with the shadow of a beast appearing behind him. Seeing this, Ivan didn't even need to read the system explanation to know what Banner opened. Beast Spirit Walker. Ability: Beast Spirit Walker. As a Beast Spirit Walker, he must carry a primitive unyielding energy will in his body. When telepathy with these wills, the Beast Spirit Walker will gradually control this power. Beast Walker. The first time Ivan knew the word, it was in a game. But judging from the current introduction, it really cooperates with Banner very well. The will of those primal energies is very similar to the Hulk. And Banner just lacks this ability to control it. This ability requires Hulk to be useful. In other words, at the very least, you must have an uncontrollable, or somewhat instinctive, raw stone energy in your body. Ivan, what is this? Banner held the card and asked in surprise. I can feel that my ability wants to have it very much, but is very afraid of it. Beast Spirit Walker. Ivan briefly explained first. A professional ability card, you will know when you crush it. It is good. Here Ivan's instructions. When Banner pinched the card instantly shattered into the sky filled with stars flying into Banner's body. Watching Banner closed his eyes, Ivan slowly introduced him. Simply put, you get an inheritance, an ability. He can raise your will and use your will to control the raw energy in your body, and with constant will training, eventually you can fully control the Hulk. When the time comes, you can control whether Hulk is angry or not. You can even use some of the Hulk's power without transforming into the Hulk. Banner at the moment is closing his eyes to feel the ability. But he listened to Ivan's words without omission. Wait until after listening to Ivan's explanation. He was speechless in shock. There is still such an ability. There is actually an ability that can just solve his own problems. He couldn't believe it, but the fact made him have to believe what he saw. After half a sound, Banner accepts all ability transmissions. Call. Banner breathed a sigh of relief and slowly opened his eyes. From the look in his eyes, Ivan saw the confidence that finally relaxed and regained hope. Ivan knows. Banner has been bothered by Hulk for a few years. In the first year he fled to a foreign country to avoid the army. In fact, Hulk had already tried shooting himself. But Hulk's ability is really powerful for the normal world. Even in Banner state, he committed suicide by drinking bullets. But it comes from the most primitive energy in his body, that is, Hulk can transform and recover. So Banner couldn't even commit suicide. As for sending myself to the military, that's not possible either way. After looking at the scene with nothing on the table and no magic engine, Banner looked at Ivan, grateful beyond words. Ivan, I really don't know how to thank you. Instead of thanking me, it's better to help those in need. Ivan smiled and picked up the glass again. Take control of your ability, there are more important things to do in the future. Although I don't know what Ivan said about the more important things in the future. But Banner gratefully picked up the glass and touched one with Ivan. After frowning and taking a sip of wine, Banner still said hesitation. I want to find a way to remove Hulk while controlling ability. Banner is an honest man, as I said before. Hulk's ability is on him, but he is not at ease. Before knowing that Hulk couldn't be separated from him at all. As a scientist, he will definitely try. So Ivan nodded. You can do anything, but don't forget to keep your heart. Hulk is simpler than you think. Hear Ivan say that. Banner nodded confidently, remembering these words. But he still had to try. He went to the university to get the materials, and he went abroad and still persisted in investigating the materials. Isn't that just thinking about getting rid of Hulk one day? But these don't belong to Ivan. He doesn't want to care about that either. The protagonists have the ideas of the protagonists. All he needs to do is sell some magic engine and live a good life. At night, on the stars, the moon hangs high in the sky, very bright. Banner, who has never been a drinker, drank a lot this time. He looked at Ivan a little faintly. Under the age of 18, even if it is Superman drinking, it is still against the law. Ivan's drinking hand paused and he couldn't help laughing. Indeed, Superman is under 18 and it's illegal to drink here. Helplessly shook his head. Ivan took another sip. Then you call Hulk out and I'll take care of it for you. When it comes to the word tube, it was dark and dark, but suddenly there was a burst of red light. Banner seemed to be touched by something. He was startled and sobered up a lot. After thinking for a while, Banner picked up the USB stick on the table, ready to say goodbye to Ivan. I have to go, the army will surely hunt me down. Ivan nodded. Even if General Ross made a big mistake, he was going to court-martial. But before that, he was in control for a while. Then during this period of time, he must go crazy looking for Banner. So Banner also knew that he couldn't stay here, otherwise he would expose Ivan's identity. And he has something to do himself. Mr. Land's antidote doesn't know if it's ready. After sending Banner away, Ivan came to the villa alone. Walking into the living room, the smart sensor light in the house lights up. Ivan is fully furnished here with appliances and internet connection. At that time, as long as the source code of JARVIS is installed, he will also be brought to the intelligence system. Definitely, Ivan doesn't need the thinking intelligence of JARVIS. As long as it understands the basic commands. Then, Ivan came to the bedroom. With a wave of his hand, the curtains closed automatically. At the same time, 3 magical engines shone with purple light and fell on the big soft bed. Bright purple light radiates. It is much more dazzling and mysterious than the blue light just now. Ivan took a closer look. Only visually, the purple energy flowing in it is much thicker and more turbulent than blue. No wonder the purple magic engine is 1 level higher than the blue magic engine. But the purple magic engine has it all. Will there be higher levels in the future? Look at the 3 magic engines on the bed. Ivan decided not to think about it. Now, these 3 magic engines are the most important to him. Reach out and pick one up. Ivan tossed him in his hands. Feel the magical energy inside. Ivan smiled lightly and unscrewed him directly. In the future, he will be able to obtain more and more magical engines. The act of opening the blind box becomes habitual. Pissed, suddenly, after Ivan opened it, a purple light shone through the room. The mysterious and turbulent energy in it escaped directly, and gradually gathered together. Thick energies are entangled with each other. Finally, it gradually condensed. Finally, it was on the engine and turned into a suit under Ivan's watch. A suit. Ivan reached out and touched it. Immediately, the suit was in the system space. The introduction also follows. Holy clothes, one of the common costumes of angel civilization, it has the function of automatic cleaning, random transformation and adjustment. The clothes of angel civilization. In Ivan's impression, wasn't that civilization all women? Not quite right, after all, the clothes adjust automatically. Ivan thought about it, and the clothes in the system space were automatically put on him. And the original ordinary clothes have been replaced. Immediately, this dress was placed behind Ivan. The places where the large file size is small begin to adjust automatically. A little wider at the shoulders and a little more embellishment. The trousers are a little looser, extending the golden lines. Clothes adjust up and down to automatically adjust to a slim, yet casual, everyday outfit. The whole body of this dress is white jade, and the extra shoulders on both sides of the shoulders make the wearer a lot more noble. The lines of golden wandering decorate the whole body, which makes people look very solemn. Seeing this, Ivan can only admire the perfect aesthetics of angel civilization. Ivan's already perfect figure is impeccable with this dress. Then, Ivan thought about trying to see if this dress could be changed. Next moment, the shoulders of the dress are gathered. The color also no longer uses holy white jade with gold patterns. Turned into a low-key calm color. After a simple change, Ivan nodded in satisfaction. The previous suit was not suitable for wearing outside. His figure and looks are really too high profile with that dress. If he was walking on the streets of New York in that dress, he would be immediately clogged. The robe of holiness is on Ivan. Simply too expensive. It's almost the perfect image for most people. Definitely, that's not to say that the style isn't worn. It's just that it's not directly in the eyes of the public. Such a beautiful style, it is a waste not to wear it. Therefore, in the future, go out with a low-key and calm style. The mentality of the holy clothes is only at home or with people you know. There is no need to go out and grab another vest of yourself, hey Chow's limelight. Then, Ivan's thoughts moved, and the clothes on his body began to change, returning to the state of holy clothes. Definitely, when he changed, in fact, the clothes have not changed all the time, they are all holy clothes, but the style of the clothes has changed at will. Look at the two magic engines left on the bed. Ivan reached for one of them and opened it with a thumb. Immediately, accompanied by shimmering purple light that fills the room. What appeared on the magic engine was actually a scaled-down castle. And it is a holy, solemn and gorgeous castle, even if the castle now only has a reduced slab file size. But Ivan can still see the detailed architecture and splendor inside the castle. Pretty, Ivan sighed. Reaching out, Ivan picked up the shrunken castle. At the same time, he already knew what was coming out this time. Really coincidental. 2 consecutive products of Angel Civilization. Angel Palace. One of the movable palaces of Angel Civilization. All retired angels can receive a palace as a retirement residence. The palace has complete intelligence and angel technology, as well as a dark plane engine drive and a complete range of residence functions. Simply put, the technological level of this palace far exceeds the average level of the Earth for more than a few years. At the same time, there is a complete technology system. The only pity is, this palace is not an Angel Civilization fighting palace, it is just a pension. Therefore, in addition to the defensive energy barrier, there is no active attack on ability. After all, when these palaces were first built, they were all placed in the Angel Nebula for the elderly, and Angel himself had a good fighting power. This also led to the fact that this old age palace did not install the attack ability. But it's much better. Ivan looked at the beauty of the palace. The beautiful arrangements of Angel Civilization are used on it. I have to say, the aesthetics of Angel Civilization is really good. A person's life is inseparable from the 4 words of food, clothing, housing and transportation. There is a comfortable angel's palace, and living in this word is quite satisfying. And holy clothes. On earth, no one's aesthetics can create this holy and noble garment. And there is a lot of technology in this dress. This is also an existence that makes it difficult for most civilizations in the universe to create. Not to mention Angel Palace. Collapse the miniature version of Angel's Palace. This will be used later. He still has the last purple magic engine to open. It's not too late to place it until it's all opened. At the same time, Ivan is also looking forward to the last magic engine, which is not a product of Angel Civilization. You know, Angel Civilization is not just about these superficial things. Their combat technology level is also very high. Just take out one of them. Night, bedroom, purple light. Ivan picked up the last magic engine and watched it carefully. It is said to be watching, but it is actually watching it carefully. After all, it's up to you what you can get out of it. Followed by a click, Ivan simply turned on the magic engine. A purple light illuminates the entire house. If I could see it from the outside, I thought there was a party going on inside. But the party didn't, and the surprise might be there. The magical engine gathers purple energy. It eventually converged into a card over the engine. Seeing this, Ivan's heart was filled with joy. 9 times out of 10, those that are generally gathered into cards are related to ability. Ivan took a closer look at the card first. On the back of the card is a sun, or a fixed star. On the front of the card, there is a person. There is a fixed star on the top of the person's head, and there seems to be a connection between the person and the fixed star. There are thousands of strands of energy threads on the fixed star that drill into the human body. At first glance, this ability must be related to the sun. Ivan thought for a while, then suddenly froze, then suddenly surprised. The ability related to the sun will not be. Speaking of which, Ivan didn't bother to guess, and just reached out and picked up the card. With the disappearance of the magic engine, the ability on the card was also transmitted into his mind. Really, template. Pseudo-sunlight. The sun's light is one of the 3 major god-building projects with the power of the galaxy and the god of war. However, since this template does not have a dark plane engine and follow-up technology, there is only one left. Optimized ability at the genetic level. Only the genetic optimization function left. Ivan looked at the card in his hand and sighed slowly. But he was still very happy. Even if only the optimization at the genetic level is left, it is a big improvement for him. It's not that he hasn't seen the performance of the sun's light. Communication can be established directly with Fixed Star. And you can borrow Fixed Star's ability to strengthen and restore itself. In any case, even if only the genetic optimization ability is left, the light of the sun without the dark plane engine is still a very strong ability. Card with sunlight in hand. Ivan didn't even think about it, just crushed it. Immediately, the card shattered into the sky and entered Ivan's body. But just as he was about to undergo genetic optimization, a request from the system suddenly came in my mind. Ding, it is detected that 2 templates can be integrated, whether to integrate to further improve ability. Whether integrate, Ivan wondered, will the potential be reduced after integrating? It will complement each other and enhance potential. What about conflicts or duplications between abilities? It will automatically integrate into the most suitable ability according to the host's own situation. Now Ivan understands. To put it simply, after integrating, the dross will be removed and the essence will be taken. After figuring out the details, Ivan nodded, confirming. Integrate. Ding, the template integrates. Template, Homelander, and template, Pseudo-sunlight are integrating. Detected the ability of heat sight, the sun's light gene strengthening. The ability of faith is detected, and the light of the sun is attached to the ability. Recovery ability is not detected, sunlight is attached to ability. Detected. In Ivan's consciousness, the ability of the 2 templates is being integrated in a stroke-by-stroke. Duplicate integrate. Elimination of garbage. Complementary strengthening. No additional. Ivan could feel a feeling of sublimation running through his soul. At the same time, his body also began to change. A little bit of golden light began to shine through Ivan's body. There was a golden light in his eyes. The skin also cast a bright eye. Under the shroud of holy robes. At the moment, Ivan is like a holy angel, like a majestic sun god, like a real god king. This sublimation has continued, but all the changes were clearly present in Ivan's mind. He knows every detail of ability changes. Just like a directory. Every change of the 2 templates will make him memorize by heart. I do not know how long it has been. Until the sun rises gradually from the sea level. At the moment when the sun just came up, Ivan opened his eyes. Instead, it is a new ability that has been upgraded to a higher level after integrate. Template body of the sun. This template has great growth potential after integrating with Superman-like genes. From now on, you can absorb the radiant energy of the sun and the energy of popular beliefs to continuously increase your ability limit. And has but not limited to super strength, super speed, super defense, super hearing, super recovery, super physical strength, super flight, super perspective, super brain, super growth, super heat vision. Looking at piles of super abilities. If Ivan said unhappy, it would be a lie. Pseudo-sunlight became the body of the sun. Although there is no ability to control the sun for the time being, the integration of the 2 templates clearly becomes stronger than before. And ability has also been enhanced a lot. The heat sight becomes a super heat sight. Moreover, the gene of the sun's light cannot be flight at the beginning, unless the dark plane technology is mastered. But now he can fly, and it's super flight. Woo! Breathe out slowly. Ivan clenched his fists, a constant stream of power pouring into his heart. Look at the rising sun outside. Ivan walked out of the room and onto the lawn outside. The sun gradually covered the whole earth, until Ivan's whole body was bathed in the sun's rays. In this state, Ivan could feel a tinge of warmth digging into his body. This is to strengthen yourself by absorbing solar radiation. Although this is not obvious at all, under the accumulated exposure, no one knows how far Ivan will grow. As long as he is bathed in the brilliance of the sun, Ivan's physical fitness and ability will be enhanced little by little. The light of the sun at its peak is a divine body. Physical fitness is almost indestructible. Although Ivan at the moment wears the body of the sun, the upper limit is definitely not too low. When he had the Homelander template, physical fitness is already bulletproof. Now that I have the body of the sun, I don't know where it can be stronger later. With open arms, Ivan seemed to embrace the sun. Take a deep breath. This sense of enhancement of a little bit of energy is really comfortable. Because it is visible and tangible, unlike the kind that cannot be seen without comparison. Ivan gets more comfortable in the sun. He raised his head and looked at the sun in the sky. Use super flight. In an instant, Ivan's figure disappeared in place. If you just observe with the ordinary naked eye, you can even see afterimages. The wind whistled past his ears. Layers of clouds were knocked away by Ivan. 3,000 meters, 5,000 meters, 8,000 meters, 10,000 meters, 20,000 meters. After reaching an altitude of 20,000 meters, Ivan stopped. It's not that he can't continue to fly, but that there is no change in flying. How big is the universe? His flight speed just now exceeded Mach 1. But at the speed of his flight just now, it would take a long time to even fly to the nearest moon. With open arms, Ivan relives the feeling of embracing the sun. He was actually here to experiment. After half a sound, Ivan frowned slightly and sighed. After flying 20,000 meters, the speed of energy absorbing in the body increased very little. But turning around and thinking about it is right. He flew 20,000 meters, that's right. But these 20,000 meters are a tiny fraction of the distance from the Earth to the Sun. So no change is right. This distance would make a big difference. By then he could go near the sun and energy absorbing the growth was outrageous. Head down, Ivan looked at the blue planet beneath his feet. Through the strengthened supervision, not to mention seeing every grass and every tree. But at least it's okay to see high-rise buildings. This is also the first time Ivan has used this perspective to see the Earth beneath his feet. The tall buildings of the past are now so small. Compared with the entire solar system, the Earth only occupies a small amount of mass. And the entire solar system is another piece of gravel to the Milky Way. Then the Milky Way goes up. There are literally countless sources. Woo! Ivan quickly stopped his inner thoughts and took a deep breath to look at the endless empty universe. Just for a while, he suddenly felt that human beings were so weak, confused, and ignorant. This sudden increase in strength also made Ivan's mood unstable and generated many ideas. No wonder so many people who are empowered lose themselves. Even contempt for life. After taking a few deep breaths, Ivan looked back at the sun one last time, then flew down. Just stayed in place for a while. But his actual coordinates have long been different from when he flew up. The Earth keeps spinning. Ivan flew down, but on the way back to New York, he stopped suddenly. Because there's a red and yellow guy flying over New York. And he was holding something in his hand, something installed on the building, on the lighthouse, etc. where the panorama could be photographed. Ivan takes a look through supervision. There is a lens on it, and it looks like a video recording device. Really? Ivan shook his head helplessly. Seeing this, how could he not know that Tony was installing something to monitor the sky over New York? And what was his purpose in doing it? Find yourself. Looking at the bullet marks and paint on his armor, Ivan knew that Tony had developed the third or fourth generation of Mark. And he should have just returned from the Middle East or Afghanistan. Ivan remembered that he was wearing this armor to take revenge and destroy the weapons that Obadiah had sold without him. Seeing Tony trying so hard to see himself, Ivan smiled, his mind moved, and he changed his holy clothes and put on a black super battle suit to cover up his identity. Next moment, he appeared behind Tony, who was installing surveillance equipment. Who are you installing these things to spy on? What? Tony, who was installing the equipment, was taken aback by the sudden appearance of Ivan behind him. With a shake of his hand, the device fell directly from the sky. At the same time, he was so frightened that he quickly turned over and leaned against the wall to cover his violently beating chest. Throwing aloft is not what a good boy should do. Watch the device fall from a height of several hundred meters. Ivan's eyes glowed golden. Immediately, two golden rays instantly destroyed the device. Yes, after obtaining the body of the sun and strengthening the overheated sight, his ability changed from red to brilliant gold. You scared me to death. Slowing down, Tony Stark was sitting on the mansion in his armor. Kaz, The next moment, his visor opened, revealing his cynical and somewhat smug face. Tony stretched out his hand and said brazenly, "You scared me, pay for the magic engine." Hee hee. Ivan was amused by Tony's frankness. He opened one hand, and a blue magic engine appeared in his hand. Tony Stark's eyes were immediately attracted to the past. "Do you want it?" Ivan tossed the magic engine. "It's cheaper to sell you this time. You make a price." Tony was very cheery. 1 million meters of gold will do. Swipe card or transfer money. Tony was very succinct, but his intelligent eyes could tell he was trying to get out of Ivan's account. Then follow through to find out who Ivan is. Unmoved, Ivan threw the blue magic engine directly over. "You promise?" "Okay." Tony took over the engine regretfully. Then he unscrewed it very simply. Blue light flashed. Because it is hundreds of meters high in the sky, no one can see it at all. Tony turned on the magic engine at the same time. He decisively put on the visor and said, "JARVIS, record." "Sir, I can't analyze it." "All right, watch as the blue energy inside the magic engine begins to condense." Tony could only open the mask again and look. Under Tony's gaze, mysterious blue energy gradually gathered above the engine. And Ivan clasped his arms, expressionlessly flying in the air waiting for the result. He didn't have much hope for this outcome, because it hasn't been that long since he sold Tony the magic engine. In other words, whether Tony's luck or the protagonist's value has not recovered. If the magic engine can't absorb the important things here, it can't drive anything good. Correspondingly, Ivan's purple magic engine can't drive anything good. Only a little better than what Tony is driving now. Convergence of blue energy. It ends up being a bottle of medicine on the engine. But there was no packaging on that bottle of medicine, just a bare shell. "What is this?" Tony took the medicine bottle and looked at it in his hand. JARVIS. "Sir, the preliminary analysis is that the tablets are diluted and poisoned." After hearing the reply from JARVIS, Tony still looked at Ivan for confirmation. Actually, the JARVIS analysis was right. Palladium poisoning diluent. There are 3 palladium poisoning dilution tablets, but after each dilution, the speed of palladium poisoning will further increase. It's a temporary lifesaver. JARVIS is right. Ivan nodded. "You'll know then." "I'll know." Tony took a good look at the vial. Because this is opened inside the magic engine. Tony put it away as a good thing. After putting away the medicine. "Introduce myself. My name is Tony Stark." Tony looked at Ivan's perfect body and figure, then at his visor, helplessly. "You have such a perfect body, even I envy you, but why don't you want to show your face?" "Because everyone has their own aspirations." Ivan slowly flew to the roof of the building and fell. Not everyone wants to expose their life to society, and you're not the only one with super ability. Not the only one. Tony raised his brows under his open visor. Now he knows that he and the Superman in front of him have super ability. "Who else?" "A lot," Ivan said lightly. "There will be more in the future." Tony looked at Ivan's posture, and sat there and learned to embrace his arms. "Then they shouldn't have as much money as me." Listen to Tony's words. Ivan smiled and shook his head. There is no one richer than Tony. The current Master Wakanda, the future King Wakanda, is richer than Tony. Look at Ivan's appearance. Tony suddenly couldn't believe it. "Is there anyone with super ability that is richer than me?" "You'll know," Ivan said. "Okay." Tony turned his head back helplessly. But the next moment he turned back and asked, looking at Ivan's visor. "When will I know your true identity?" Watching Ivan come over with the visor, Tony wasn't stupid. Ivan didn't want to tell him his true identity now. "It won't be long." Ivan sighed inwardly. He can feel it. His true identity will definitely be revealed. It's just a matter of time. Definitely, this is not to say that it is completely exposed to the public. Instead, it will be exposed to all superhero first, and then exposed to society. The reason for this is actually quite simple. 1. He lives in New York, and these traces cannot be erased. 2. Tony Stark and Nick Fury are both trying their best to find themselves. 3. The overall technology is very developed, satellites, cameras, radar scanning, plus the full help of Tony, the hero. 4. He has more and more superhero contacts, such as Peter Parker, Banner Hulk, Tony Stark, etc. It is easy to be exposed along the cobweb horse trail. Definitely, Ivan is not saying that he has to hide his vest to hide his identity. This is only temporary. He just didn't want to be exposed as a whole in the early days, and then the threshold was broken. It's annoying to have someone looking for you every day. Tony didn't look like Ivan was trying to hide it, it was just a matter of time. He smiled and said quietly, "You can just tell me no for the time being. I won't say anything. I still want to ask you to come to my house as a guest." Ivan listened and shook his head. Everyone will know by then. Hearing Ivan say this, Tony can only turn his head regretfully. Next moment, Ivan sensed that someone had called him. "I have something else to do, I'll go first." Using super flight, he flies straight home. Tony looked at Ivan, who flew away, his eyes still a little reluctant. He actually has a lot more to talk about with Ivan. Next moment, Ivan arrives at home in Queens. Take out the phone from the system space. It looked like it was Peter Parker calling. After connecting, "Hey, Ivan, a red-haired agent from the Homeland Strategic Defense Offensive and Logistics Service came to me. She said her name was Romanov, and asked me about yesterday's college, and..." Okay, needless to say, Ivan interrupts Peter Parker directly. Now that the SHIELD agent has found Peter Parker, then Peter Parker's Spider-Man identity is definitely exposed. And to recall Black Widow, who was on a mission outside, was to conclude that Peter Parker was still a high school student, and he would definitely not be able to resist Black Widow's information technology for detection. Then come up and pretend you don't know Peter Parker's true identity. Then let Peter Parker dig around to see if he can come up with more information without knowing it. The old agent has operated. Now that Peter Parker has called himself the first time, then SHIELD will surely notice itself. If you keep thinking about concealing it, it's unnecessary, life will be very troublesome, it's better to shock them directly. Natasha Romanoff, you find Peter Parker and ask him to bring you to my house. Huh, Peter Parker was taken aback. He had no idea what was going on. What is Ivan talking about? But the next moment, Ivan has hung up the phone. SHIELD Level 9 agent, Natasha Romanoff can operate it herself. Before that, one in the SHIELD agent intelligence station in New York. Natasha Romanoff and Phil Coulson stood in front of several instruments, watching their agents at work. The task of this group of agents is to monitor Peter Parker's phone. Natasha Romanoff holds the tablet, frowning and brushing over the various pieces of information recently collected by the SHIELD. This includes Tony's armor, Mutant Hulk, Peter Parker in spider battlesuit, and Superman, showing the most important information. After reading all the information, Natasha Romanoff slowly shook her head while holding the tablet. "I went out to execute, so much happened in New York." Phil Coulson nodded approvingly. "Fortunately, they are not bad guys, otherwise it would be troublesome." Natasha Romanoff pursed her red lips. "Even the good guys, enough of a headache." What is the Homeland Strategic Defense Attack and Logistics Support Agency? Literal meaning: all risks are taken into account by SHIELD. More than anything else, SHIELD definitely wants things to be calm and not hilarious. But now suddenly there are so many people with ability. Either way, it's a potential risk. Unless Natasha Romanoff and Phil Coulson thought about it at the same time. Unless it is to absorb this group of people into SHIELD and convert it into its own power. This will not only give you a lot of peace of mind, but also increase your own strength. As a 9th level agent, both new director Nick Fury had a superhero plan. And when the two came out to investigate, director Nick Fury also repeatedly emphasized that he should try his best to make friends. After the relationship is familiar, and the superhero project is launched, he will pull in. What's next? Phil Coulson looked at Natasha Romanoff. Wait for word from this Peter Parker Spider-Man. With that said, Natasha Romanoff pulls up Peter Parker's profile from the tablet. After discovering his identity yesterday, after investigation, there was another person named Ivan who was very close to him. We pulled up this profile called Ivan. After data comparison, whether in terms of muscle, shoe size, arm circumference, fist, fingers and other details, the height and figure of Superman in black are very similar to him. So listen for a while to see what his relationship with Ivan is. As long as they call, it's almost verified. Natasha Romanoff quickly spoke out about her plans. In this reconnaissance operation, Natasha Romanoff is the main, supplemented by Phil Coulson. Listen to Natasha Romanoff coming up with a plan so quickly. Phil Coulson nodded. He believed in Natasha Romanoff's skill level. There is news. At this time, the agent under his command suddenly reported the news. The two put down the tablet in their hands, took the headset handed over by the agent, and started monitoring. Then, the voice of Peter Parker appeared inside. Ivan, there's a territorial strategy. Natasha Romanoff, you go to Peter Parker and ask him to bring you to my house. Hearing this, the phone has been hung up. Natasha Romanoff's eyes widened in surprise. The other party actually knew his full name, and also knew that Peter Parker was being monitored. Suddenly, Natasha Romanoff and Phil Coulson had a flash of inspiration. They can guess right away. The Ivan Peter Parker said may really be a black-clothed Superman. Put down the headset that has interrupted the phone call. Natasha Romanoff picked up the gear and walked out immediately. Since the other party has said so, then she has to go. Go halfway. Natasha Romanoff turned to look at Phil Coulson, who was waiting there. You're not going. He only called you one. Phil Coulson shook his head. If the other party is Superman, one more me is the same as one less me. It's easier for you to go alone to gain his favor. Natasha Romanoff thought about it, nodded, and drove out. After a while, the door of Peter Parker's house. By the time Natasha Romanoff pulled over, Peter Parker was already waiting at the door. Peter Parker looked left and right. Fortunately, Ben Uncle and Aunt May were at work, otherwise he didn't know how to explain that an agent came to find him. Watch the car arrive. Peter Parker hesitation for a moment, then he opened the car door and went in. Natasha Romanoff put on a jacket with agent clothes inside, and asked without looking back at the road while wearing a black lens. Address. Wait. Peter Parker took his phone out of his bag and looked at it. The address Ivan just gave me is in the back of Queens by the Sea. Natasha Romanoff nodded, glanced at the address, and passed the accelerator. The vehicle is on the road. Out of the corner of his eye, Peter Parker saw the gun on Natasha Romanoff. This time he stopped hesitation and asked directly to Natasha Romanoff. What do you want to do? Ivan has nothing to do with what happened yesterday. Natasha Romanoff drove the car without explaining too much. We're not malicious, and besides, it's super, your friend Ivan told us to go, didn't it? Peter Parker thought about it. Because of his trust in Ivan, he stopped talking in the car. Suddenly, Natasha Romanoff asked again. What kind of person is Ivan in your heart? Hearing this, Peter Parker gave Natasha Romanoff a strange look. As an old saying goes, a teacher is also a friend. A lot of things, he taught me what to do. Including ability, Natasha Romanoff asked. Peter Parker thought for a while, then nodded in agreement. After getting similar information, Natasha Romanoff did not ask any further questions, but drove silently to Ivan's house. Dozens of minutes later, when the car is parked next to a private seaside villa, Peter Parker's mouth widened in surprise. He knew that Ivan was very rich, but he didn't expect to live in a private villa by the sea. Facing Peter Parker's expression, Natasha Romanoff had a panoramic view. Then, the two walked into the door opened by the intelligence. Enter the gate, walk through the courtyard, and come to the main gate. The door's intelligence system scans. DIP, identification, Natasha Romanoff, Peter Parker, you are welcome. With the sound of an emotionless voice, the door of the last living room also opened. Natasha Romanoff saw it right away. Sitting on the sofa in the living room was the young man dressed in white jade and gold silk and a holy robe. This is the first time Natasha Romanoff has seen Ivan in real life. Although it was the day before yesterday and yesterday when I knew the name, I have only seen it on videos and photos taken by the agents. So frankly, it was the first time that Natasha Romanoff had been an agent for so many years, seeing such a noble and beautiful person. Yes, it's people, regardless of gender. Or in other words, both men and women. Definitely, as an agent, Natasha Romanoff is not crazy, just a lot better. My God, Ivan. Peter Parker put his bag at the door and walked in to watch the for Joe Dow. Your home is so beautiful. Angel Palace has not been released yet. It's really pretty when it comes out. Do it. Ivan stood up and took Peter Parker to the sofa and sat down. Peter Parker sat down rather calmly. What he didn't know was that he actually had a friend who was richer than Ivan now. That is Osborn's master, Harry Osborn. And Peter Parker and Ivan are true friends. There is no money or interest between the two. So the other party will live a good life, and they will be happier. Peter Parker sat down. Ivan asked Natasha Romanoff, who was also sitting on the other side. What would you like to drink? Natasha Romanoff smiled. Water will do. Ivan nodded and waved lightly on the table. Immediately, wine, beverages, and ice water all automatically appeared in the sky. Fell yourself. Natasha Romanoff looked at the red wine and ice on the table. She reached out, picked up bottle after bottle of red wine and looked at it. Find your satisfaction after drinking. Natasha Romanoff took the cups, mixed them together in proportions and poured them in. Then pick up another cup of the same file size and cover it. Finally, she swayed under Peter Parker's surprised gaze. That's it. Natasha Romanoff made a total of 3 cups. During this time, she also asked Ivan if Peter Parker could drink. Ivan glanced at Peter Parker. Peter Parker nodded curiously. He hasn't tasted the blended wine yet. Moreover, with Spider-Man's physique, he definitely won't get drunk with a little alcohol. Pick up the wine paired with Black Widow. Ivan took a bite and it was really good. Peter Parker took a sip, then sips. Ivan nodded. Not bad. Thanks for the appreciation. Natasha Romanoff was drinking her own wine too. Peter Parker took a few sips. He leaned on the sofa a little depressed, looked at Natasha Romanoff and asked. My identity was revealed yesterday. Natasha Romanoff glanced at Ivan. After finding Ivan unmoved, she nodded to confirm. Yale University has a lot of cameras. You left early, and you left at the end. After you made a confession with other students, and the information collected before was analyzed and matched by a computer, it was easy to find you. No, Peter Parker sighed. You won't expose my identity. Definitely. Natasha Romanoff nodded. I'm just responsible for communicating with you, registering my identity, confirming the information, that's all. That's all. Peter Parker was a little disbelieving. At the same time, Ivan also looked at Natasha Romanoff. Peter Parker's gaze was fine. But facing Ivan's gaze, Natasha Romanoff was under a lot of pressure. After a moment of silence, Natasha Romanoff sighed slightly. Well, that's all for now. Peter Parker immediately gave Ivan a look I knew. After Ivan's guidance, Peter Parker has changed a bit, but not much. Today's accidental exposure is because he cares about Ivan very much, and he is just anxious about Ivan. But in the face of other problems it is still good. Ivan took the wine glass and leaned on the sofa to take a sip. I know, Nick Protect Fury, that braised egg, for sure first let you communicate with us, and then build a good relationship step by step until you stand in line with you. Hear what Ivan has to say. Natasha Romanoff looked at Ivan with slightly wide eyes. She didn't expect that Ivan actually knew everything. Monitor calls from the beginning. SHIELD's internal plans are known only to a few people so far. Think about it now. The other party seemed to know everything. Don't worry. Natasha Romanoff reassured Peter Parker and Ivan first. I will communicate with the director. It's useless what you said. Ivan shook his head indifferently. The plan actually started many years ago, around the time Fury injured his eye. What? Natasha Romanoff opened her mouth slightly. The young boy in front of him not only knows so many things, but also many early events of S.H.I.E.L.D. And she didn't even know about these events. While she hasn't verified the truth, Natasha Romanoff, who has deduced that Ivan is Superman, is almost certain he's telling the truth. Peter Parker looked at Ivan, who could surprise the agent with just a few words. I could not help but admire in my heart. Still have to Ivan awe. He doesn't have such a strong heart and brain. Yan value. That's just the most basic surface of Ivan. Back to reality. Ivan took another sip of wine and looked at Natasha Romanoff, who was beginning to waver. When you go back, you can tell Nick Fury that the superhero plan is fine, that's right, and Peter Parker will be in sooner or later. After that, Ivan looked at Peter Parker to see if he agreed. Peter Parker nodded without hesitation. Although he couldn't understand it, he knew that Ivan wouldn't fool himself. Hear what Ivan has to say. Natasha Romanoff looked at Peter Parker, then at Ivan. She wanted to ask, what about you, Mr. Superman? But Ivan didn't take the initiative to bring it up, but instead made the call for Peter Parker. Relatively speaking, Natasha Romanoff's task has been overdone. The Ivan incident was calculated by Natasha Romanoff himself and followed Ivan's words here. If Ivan is really Superman, he can also pull Superman in. That's a huge plus for S.H.I.E.L.D. At this time, Peter Parker's phone rang. He took out his phone, and when he saw the caller, he quickly stood up and walked to the door. Ivan, Aunt May is looking for me, I have to go back. After that, he picked up the bag at the door and ran out. Seeing Peter Parker leave just like that, Natasha Romanoff was suddenly a little nervous. After seeing Peter Parker go, Natasha Romanoff turned her head to meet Ivan's deep eyes. Do not know why, possibly because the other is almost certainly Superman's identity and power. It is also possible that Ivan at the moment's figure, clothes, and momentum put too much pressure on her. Natasha Romanoff brought his slightly separated legs together. The whole body sat up straight. Ivan laughed at the sudden change of Natasha Romanoff. Why, the 9th level agent Black Widow also has moments of nervousness. Natasha Romanoff pursed her lips. After thinking about it, Ivan gave him a blank look. She turned her head, and tucked her pretty red hair behind her ear, in what is generally the best pose for Ivan's age. Mr. Superman, facing Natasha Romanoff's almost frank questioning. Ivan wasn't interested in her white collarbones and delicate ears. Although the side effects of the previous Homelander template were still there, it made him feel good about Yuji a lot. But a good feeling is a good feeling, and it does not mean that you have to like it. It's just that he doesn't like it very much now. Ivan emptied the glass and emptied it on the table. I'll let you know if I make another cup. Immediately. Natasha Romanoff gave Ivan a charming look. Face the answers that are about to come. She would definitely be willing to make another drink. Wine, juice, ice, drinks. After a few minutes, Natasha Romanoff once again served 2 different drinks. Ivan picked it up and took a sip. Natasha Romanoff also picked up a glass and drank it. Bartending entrance. The taste is much stronger than before. It seems to be because of Peter Parker. Or because of the current atmosphere, Natasha Romanoff deliberately tuned it. The wine is finished. Natasha Romanoff's cheeks were flushed with reddish drunkenness. This is enough to show how strong the wine she just mixed. Definitely, it's just better for Ivan's physique. Then Natasha Romanoff looked at Ivan with her now glowing eyes. Ivan took a sip of his wine, no nonsense. Slap. A snap of fingers hit Ivan's hand. Immediately, 1 meter above the table, a battlesuit with an obsidian-like surface appeared. The cloak behind the battlesuit was still floating slightly. This is not a black super battlesuit, what it is. Natasha Romanoff stood up immediately after seeing it, and Xiaomo was speechless in surprise. After half a sound, she just reacted and asked Ivan, "Can I touch it and record it by the way?" Ivan leaned back on the floppy sofa and waved. Meaning, please, or rather, at will. After getting consent, Natasha Romanoff immediately took off his jacket. Then he took out a pen-like device from his tight-fitting agent battlesuit and placed it on his shoulder. She understands well, so to avoid shooting Ivan, she chose to come in front of Ivan, show her back to Ivan and start recording the battlesuit. Ivan looked at the tight little leather drum in front of him and smiled helplessly. Do this kind of thing. Then come. He is not at a loss. Besides, Natasha Romanoff is also a beauty. How to say? Pleasure. Then, Natasha Romanoff, after opening the first-person video, she touched the battlesuit with her slender fingers. He covered the entire palm of his hand and caressed it carefully. She has no birth explanation. Because she has written down all these, she can go back and talk about it. But Ivan doesn't even care the reason, let alone. Hey Chow battlesuit shield absolutely can't analyze a reason. This is the technology of Krypton's Superman planet. Even if it was given to Tony Stark, he might not be able to analyze it. Unless it's a fake one. After carefully stroking the battlesuit, Natasha Romanoff bent over to touch the cloak curiously and asked without looking back. Did you fly with this cloak? Look at the 2 petals that are getting tighter and tighter in front of you. Ivan knew she was lying to herself, but she volunteered to take a look. Flying is my own ability. Natasha Romanoff suddenly half got up in surprise and turned to look at Ivan. This pose, how to say, back, after touching the material of the cloak. Natasha Romanoff didn't know either, so he had to go back and tell the researchers about his experience. Then, she pinched the surface of the battle suit with her fingers. Found it a bit semi-soft, not very hard, and then said in surprise, "It can resist bullets, and the material is so soft." No wonder Natasha Romanoff was so surprised. After all, relying on modern technology, which bulletproof material is not ridiculously hard, but also thick. But the black super battle suit has only a thin layer. And it's a lot softer than that. If this is worn on the body, how high is the sense of security? But Ivan smiled and shook the glass in his hand. "You can try shooting the battle suit and my body and see who's tougher." Heard here, Natasha Romanoff's heart murmured. To be able to experiment with the battle suit function, she would definitely like it. "Turn around." Natasha Romanoff picked up the pistol and bit her lip. "Then try which of you is tougher." "Done." Natasha Romanoff aimed the pistol at the top of the triangle below the battle suit, watching as Ivan pulled the trigger on the pistol. Boom. The bullet has been fired. But no echo. Natasha Romanoff immediately turned to look at the battle suit. It was found that the bullet slowly fell on the table from that place. Ding. Natasha Romanoff bent over to pick up the still hot bullet on the table and took a closer look. The bullet's warhead has been flattened. Proof that the bullet hit. She saw it too. But there was no sound at all. This means that all the energy hit by the bullet is absorbed by the battle suit, and there is nothing left. Oh my god. That's when Natasha Romanoff guessed. Why is Ivan willing to show this battle suit to himself and study it for himself? It turned out that he was sure that even if the technology of this battlesuit was given to her, S.H.I.E.L.D. would be helpless. The gap in technology level is too great. Like ants and gulfs, it is impossible to pry. All right, Natasha Romanoff sighed in disappointment. But she suddenly regained her spirits and pursed her red lips and looked at Ivan. Because, there is another experiment, but the other party promised himself. Superman, you can't go back on your word. Look at Natasha Romanoff's renewed interest. Ivan leaned back on the sofa, a mysterious smile on his lips. You can only fire one shot, but remember, don't break my clothes. Natasha Romanoff first nodded happily. Then start looking for where to shoot. But it didn't take long for her to get into trouble. Slippers, holy clothes or a full set of trousers and long sleeves, there is no place to shoot. There is no bare spot on Ivan's body for the time being. If anything, it's only Ivan's face. But that place dares Natasha Romanoff. She ruled it out at first, not thinking about it at all. Natasha Romanoff's eyes searched up and down Ivan in a strange way. Ivan shook the cup. You now have 3 options. 1. Take off my shoes. 2. Shoot my palm. 3. Put away the gun and leave. Here 3 choices. Natasha Romanoff ruled out 3 for the first time. If you choose the third one, that's a normal idiot. And the remaining 1 and 2. Natasha Romanoff had almost no hesitation, and stepped forward and took the initiative to pull Ivan's palm. After looking at Ivan, Natasha Romanoff bowed her head and rubbed his palm finely. Ivan was unmoved, just looking at Natasha Romanoff's redhead and smiling helplessly. Think about it now. It's also fun to be around a beauty like Natasha Romanoff. Mature, intellectual, smart. She will neither defeat your Xingzi nor let you down, but will only make you happy both physically and mentally. Faced with this situation, Ivan likes it. Yeah, who doesn't like it? Time passed for a while. Ivan found Natasha Romanoff still rubbing his palm. Does the famous Black Widow agent still have such a hobby? Natasha Romanoff came to his senses. She just took a closer look at the difference between Superman and humans. Whoever knew it was put on this hat. Immediately, Natasha Romanoff brought Ivan's palm to his mouth and took a bite. Hiss. Ivan sucked in a breath. It's not painful. But stimulated. But it did make him a little angry. I am very angry now. Ivan pouted. With a flip of his palm, he immediately squeezed Natasha Romanoff's cheek. Although the flesh on Natasha Romanoff's face is very small, and it is still a standard melon face. But who told Ivan to have big palms? As soon as he went down, Natasha Romanoff pursed his lips. No matter what angle you look at, Natasha Romanoff, who was originally a cold rose, has now turned into a red hamster. Ha ha ha. Ivan laughed at Natasha Romanoff's messy appearance. Then he reluctantly let go of her. Satisfied, Natasha Romanoff glared at Ivan. I don't know if I'm angry or happy. Angry because he treated himself so rudely. It started because the relationship between the two had improved a lot. Even if she glared at each other, Ivan wouldn't blame her or be angry with her. This is for the identity of the other party as Superman. Still very good news. If you are an ordinary person, or a general superhero, try it. It would be nice if Natasha Romanoff didn't turn his face on the spot. But in the face of Ivan, she just glared at me with a charming look. This is power. This is what absolute power can bring. Ivan took a sip of wine and sighed inwardly, watching Natasha Romanoff still sulking. It was as if he had lost his personality. Ivan said lightly, "Don't try. I don't have time to play with you anymore." The man in front of him became cold again. Natasha Romanoff rolled her eyes speechlessly. She quickly took out the pistol. Then aimed at Ivan's palm and pulled the trigger. Boom! The bullet hit Ivan's palm. The skin around him didn't even tremble. It's just that the muscle that was hit hardened a bit. The bullet then fell off. Natasha Romanoff picked up the hot bullet in disbelief and looked at it. Also, the bullet is flat. There seems to be nothing to explain. Natasha Romanoff looked up at Ivan and asked in surprise, "How strong is your defense if you put on that battle suit with your physique? You seem to be asking too much." Ivan glanced at Natasha Romanoff. Natasha Romanoff pouted and looked at Ivan. But those hands quietly wanted to pick up his hand and take a bite. Snapped. Ivan held it down. "This is your last question." Natasha Romanoff withdrew her hand and nodded quickly. Ivan then replied, "Maybe the Tomahawk cruise missile will cause damage to me, but I haven't tried it." As soon as I heard it was a Tomahawk cruise missile, Natasha Romanoff opened her mouth in surprise. She had thought that at best Ivan would be able to withstand ordinary missiles. It is similar to the kind of aircraft mounted and launched by a car. Unexpectedly, it was cruise missiles that answered her. You know, the power of a cruise missile can destroy an urban area. But this kind of injury can make Ivan injured. Facing Natasha Romanoff with her mouth still open, Ivan poured the last bit of wine from his glass into her mouth. Then he waved his hand and drove people down the aisle. "You can go now." Natasha Romanoff swallowed the wine. Now that Ivan has ordered the eviction, even if she didn't want to leave, she could only obey and leave. Put the gun back in the holster, then grab the couch vest and put it on. Natasha Romanoff rubbed her cheek. In front of Ivan, let himself change back to the cold and unfeeling Black Widow. This may be one of her skills. Let Ivan know that only in front of people like him will he become what he was just now. Natasha Romanoff hurried to the door coldly. Just before opening the door and leaving, she looked back at Ivan and smiled suddenly. "What do you think of director Nick Fury's plan?" She is not easy to invite directly, so she asked Ivan's opinion in another way. Ivan definitely knows another layer of meaning of this sentence. He stretched, stood up and walked towards the balcony. In the back of Natasha Romanoff, the moment Ivan left, he left a sentence. "Go back and tell Nick Fury if you're qualified." Chapter 31. Watching Natasha Romanoff leave in silence, Ivan walked to the balcony normally and stretched comfortably. In bright sunshine, it's as if those talks with Natasha Romanoff just now were just blips. But actually it is. Speaking of Natasha Romanoff, Ivan can only have a crush on her ceiling. It is impossible to like. No matter how it develops in the future, it will only be above friends and not full of lovers. And relative to Natasha Romanoff, Scarlet Witch is no worse than her. Wanda at the moment is an untapped potential from every angle. As for the question of Natasha Romanoff before leaving, Ivan's answer is also sincere. Take the current situation of S.H.I.E.L.D. There's no need for Ivan to join. They are also not eligible. What S.H.I.E.L.D. can't do, Ivan can do. What Ivan can do, S.H.I.E.L.D. can't do. If Ivan joins now, it is equivalent to surrendering his identity. And suddenly he joins S.H.I.E.L.D. with such a large combat power, so Nick Fury's judgment on other things will also have an impact. He didn't want to change the plot because of his participation. Ivan still needs to follow the development of the plot. Only wait until the strength is strong enough to ignore the impact of the plot changes. That can do whatever you want. After a while, Ivan, who was basking in the sun, flipped his hand, and a shrunken castle appeared in his palm. This is the Angel Palace. First by Tony, then by Natasha Romanoff for so long. Finally had time to place it. Ivan flew into the sky. He stretched out his hand and pushed the Angel Palace in his hand slightly forward. Immediately, the world changed. A wave of energy surged out of the palace, radiating a large distance around it. Immediately after, the energy fluctuations began to change, eventually forming a circular transparent film shrouded in dark energy in the air. Ivan knew it was a dark energy barrier. Not only has a defense function, a reconnaissance function, but also a stealth function. Under the shroud of this dark energy film, the outside cannot see the inside. Everyone just thinks that there is nothing here. And at the moment of special need, the palace can directly switch to the dark plane state to achieve the state of real disappearance. But this state consumes a lot of dark energy. The dark matter engine that comes with the palace cannot last for a few days, unless the owner constantly inputs dark energy into it. However, the consumption level of the normal state, the dark matter engine that comes with the palace can still fully meet the supply. Then, with the dark energy barrier fully opened, the shrinking Angel Palace blinked and suddenly became bigger. It instantly changed from a slab file size to almost a football field file size. Fortunately, Ivan calculated the proportion of this palace. Put it in the sky for use. If it is placed on land, it must not break the entire land. After the palace becomes larger. Before Ivan could observe, a voice appeared in his mind. Ding, the identity of the homeowner has been detected, and the identity registration is in progress. Gene registration in progress. The registration is complete. My lord, you can use all the functions of the palace. With the success of the palace certification, all the information and functions about the palace also appeared in Ivan's mind. Ivan nodded. Adjust the palace to travel status. Yes, travel status, a bit like stealth status. In this state, before others attack the palace will not open the full state of defense. But the palace will fill up the stealth and detection status of dark energy. In this state, no one on Earth can find the location of the palace. And the palace is the center. Almost the entire hemisphere is within the detective range of the palace. For example, which superhero fought on the streets of New York? What's going on inside S.H.I.E.L.D.? Are aliens attacking? Or which island was lifted to the sky and so on? The palace can directly detect and report to Ivan the moment these things happen. Really good stuff. Ivan flew to the front of the palace. The distribution of the entire palace is roughly divided into the front yard of the Fountain Jade column, the backyard with beautiful garden views, and the palace with a rectangular cube in the middle. Ivan walks through the artistic front yard. Enter the palace. Inside the palace is a large living room. There are 4 stairs leading to all sides around. The front is the access to the backyard. Ivan was too lazy to walk over and over again. He stretched out his hand and waved in front of him. A transparent panel appeared in front of him. This panel is not Ivan's ability. Instead, the entire palace is controlled according to the intelligence system plus the control panel of dark energy finally formed in front of him. This is the embodiment of a technology that fully manipulates dark energy. Also very practical. Ivan scratched the panel, and after a while, he looked at the entire palace. Eventually he figured out where he lived. That is the inside of the very top of the main entrance of the palace. From this position, you can see the front yard and the backyard. And the largest room is reserved for the owner. But Ivan is in no hurry to move in now. It's only a few hours. He turned and walked towards the backyard. After coming to the backyard, he was attracted by the scenery here. Gardens, plants, shade, lawns, vegetation, cradles, loungers, seating, furniture, pools and more. It can be said to be an excellent rest area. Ivan fell in love with it at first sight. And there is plenty of sunshine here. If you rest on the reclining chair, drink a drink and a small wine, this is a beautiful thing. Just do it. Ivan went to the recliner and lay down comfortably. With a wave of his hand, all the cold drinks and drinks appeared on the exquisite jade table next to him. The sun shone on Ivan. He could still feel a trace of energy digging into his body. Ivan took a sip of wine, then picked up a pair of sunglasses and put them on his eyes. What do you say today? If you look at it according to the standards of the immortal world, it seems that there are only couples left. Ivan considers himself not a saint. So with the improvement of strength, and the stability of the day, It seems that the meaning of the word, mate, can also be considered on the agenda. The next morning, Ivan picked up the school bag placed at the door, came to the entrance of the palace, and flew straight down. In the air of flight. How to say, Ivan suddenly had the cool feeling of a big guy hiding in the mundane world. You thought I was just an ordinary high school student. But who would have thought that he still has these abilities and identities? No wonder people like to pretend to be pigs and eat tigers. It was so cool. Dropped near Midtown Science High School. Ivan walks into campus after meeting Peter Parker, carrying his bag over his shoulder. Peter Parker skillfully took Ivan's backpack, then curiously asked in a low voice, "After I left, what happened to you and that agent yesterday?" After speaking, Peter Parker also winked at Ivan. Look at Peter Parker's little eyes. Ivan patted him funny. Take care of yourself first. That's right. Peter Parker thought about it for a while. I think most girls like you, Ivan, based on your background and affiliation. You exposed Spider-Man's identity, didn't you? That won't work. Peter Parker shook his head quickly. Walking through the square, the two put their bags in the cabinet and took out their textbooks. At this time, Eugene also came from behind. But after seeing Peter Parker's eyes, he fled in a panic. Ivan definitely noticed this. On the way to class, Peter Parker thought about it and asked, "Ivan, am I overdoing it?" Peter Parker hit Eugene hard. This is equivalent to crushing his self-esteem and self-confidence. It's just violence, Ivan said indifferently. Although it seems a little too much, if you didn't teach him to this point, he would bully more students. Peter Parker nodded in agreement. Indeed it is. Different people have different responses. Some can be persuasive, but some can only be cruel to him. That's it. The day passed quickly. The United States high school also doesn't have long classes each day. The sun hasn't started to set yet. Midtown Science High School is out. On the way home, Peter Parker suddenly remembered something and said to Ivan suspiciously, "Ivan, Dr. Connors is gone." Gone. Ivan thought about the plot development. Gwen did not go to Dr. Connors' laboratory today, but went straight home. When did you disappear? A few days ago. Peter Parker thought about it. When I went to him yesterday, I was informed that Connors was not working at Osborn. I gave him the genetic decay formula left over from my parents, and I worked with him on genetic grafting, and it worked out. I wanted to figure out the ability with Dr. Connors, but he's gone. Hearing this, Ivan has confirmed where the plot has developed. Peter Parker was working with Dr. Connors, he had spoken to Ivan before. But Ivan didn't stop, because Peter Parker's ability and awakening were all learned from his research with Connors. Then you should pay more attention to the Osborn group. Ivan reminded, because according to reality, whether Dr. Connors was kicked out by the opponent or ran away with his technological achievements, the Osborn group has an unshirkable responsibility. Peter Parker nodded, clearly agreeing with the idea. But after thinking about it, he still suggested to Ivan, "I want to sneak into Dr. Connors' laboratory at night to confirm." No matter what, now that it has come this far, then Peter Parker's hard work these days can't be wasted. No matter what's going on with Dr. Connors right now. At least Peter Parker wanted to figure it out. Ivan agreed. With your current ability, there is no problem, pay attention to safety. Peter Parker nodded, separated from Ivan and went home. After separating from Peter Parker, Ivan just wanted to use flight to get back to the palace. As a result, I saw two agents waiting quietly at my door. One male, one female. I know the woman, I saw it yesterday. The men also knew each other, but it was the first time they met in real life. Ivan flew gently to the door. After Phil Coulson and Natasha Romanoff heard the agent in the headset say that Superman was back, they turned around to find Ivan behind them. Phil Coulson reacted first, smiling and bowing slightly. "Hello, Mr. Ivan, this is Phil Coulson." Ivan nodded, indicating that he understood. As for Natasha Romanoff, she needs an introduction. Ivan lost his hand and threw the bag to Natasha Romanoff. Then fell to the ground and entered the villa. Watching Ivan leave, Phil Coulson looked slightly surprised at Natasha Romanoff, who was holding Ivan's bag. It seems that Natasha Romanoff was right about what he reported in front of them yesterday. Even better than what was said. Phil Coulson nodded secretly. It appears that Natasha Romanoff is a key point in a good relationship with Ivan Superman. Gotta go back and talk to director Nick Fury. Wait until the two of them enter the interior of the villa. Ivan has been lying back on the sofa. At the moment he has changed into holy clothes. Phil Coulson saw it, and he had already analyzed and guessed that Ivan had extravagance, but not arrogance and domineering. Definitely, this is the undisguised nature of Ivan. He was a man who wanted to live a happy life. It would be tiring to be arrogant and domineering every day. I saw two people entering the house. Ivan tilted his head to indicate that he could sit on the single sofa on either side. Natasha Romanoff raised her bag in her hands. Ivan raised his chin. Just put it on the cabinet by the door. Wait until Natasha Romanoff is done putting away her bag. And then sit behind the sofa separate from Phil Coulson. Ivan looked at the two of them, took a sip of wine and said lightly. You guys seem to be a little diligent in coming here. Are you treating me as a party? Ivan said lightly. Immediately, the pressure on Phil Coulson increased. It was as if a mountain was pressing against my heart and I couldn't breathe. But he's not good at negotiating and doesn't know as much as Natasha Romanoff. Immediately, he turned his eyes for help to Natasha Romanoff, who was holding various bottles of wine ready to mix at the moment. Natasha Romanoff is mixing wine, why not be afraid? Because she was also called, she went back yesterday to report on the progress of the mission. The three people present, Nick Fury, Hill, and Phil Coulson opened their eyes slightly and froze. Nick Fury clearly told Natasha Romanoff that the task was to win over Spider-Man. Who knew that a day passed, Spider-Man not only wooed, also found out Superman and made a good relationship. Definitely, Nick Fury is not in disbelief either. It's just that he can't figure it out. After all, it is about Superman, so it needs to be certified more. Now that Natasha Romanoff says the foundational relationship has been established. Then Fury wanted to let Natasha Romanoff introduce another agent to Ivan. After all, dual liaisons are the safest. Certainly, Fury is not afraid that Natasha Romanoff has other secrets. But there are many tasks in the bureau. If Natasha Romanoff has other assignments, what about Ivan's? So the two liaisons can stagger the missions so they don't break Ivan's connection here. Watching Phil Coulson look for help, Natasha Romanoff put the blended drink on the table and pushed it to Ivan. Director Nick Fury, let's say hi, and if you have anything, you can call me or Phil Coulson agent. At the moment, if the brain is not smart, might just realize that's the way it is, Ivan just nod. But get the body of the sun. And after having super brain thinking, Ivan picked up the glass that Natasha Romanoff pushed over and said lightly. Leave this to Natasha Romanoff. Ivan glanced at the relieved Phil Coulson agent. I'll be there for you, no matter where you are, and if you're looking for me, let Natasha Romanoff tell me. Okay, Phil Coulson nodded immediately. He was under pressure just now, but now he is secretly happy. Because Ivan's words represent the official relationship between Natasha Romanoff and Ivan, and Natasha Romanoff is the hub of this relationship. Ivan definitely knows here too. But he just wanted to save trouble. Don't change people to come here every day. Natasha Romanoff looked comfortable at least. Can't you call Hill? But Hill is the deputy director, and she has her own business to do, and she doesn't go out to perform tasks. Ivan leaned back on the couch when something suddenly occurred to him, and he glanced at Phil Coulson. When are you guys going to meet Tony Stark? This statement came out. The bodies of Phil Coulson and Natasha Romanoff were lifted. Can ask this. Explain that Tony Stark in steel armor has been known. But after thinking that this sentence was uttered by Ivan Superman, they understood again. However, Natasha Romanoff suddenly thought of something. Tony Stark has been looking for someone lately. S.H.I.E.L.D. had been investigating for a long time, but couldn't figure out who Tony was looking for. But S.H.I.E.L.D. had already guessed from Tony's tone. That guy must have helped Tony in Afghanistan. And it also benefited Tony Stark a lot. Otherwise, Tony Stark would not have rushed to find this person immediately after he got out of trouble. But after the current intelligence speculation, this person, wouldn't it be Ivan? Put this matter to a later date. Natasha Romanoff came back to her senses and answered first. We're also waiting for an opportunity to approach Tony Stark now, and he'll think we have other meanings, but we just want to have a good relationship with him first. Ivan shook his head disapprovingly. You'd better let Nick Fury do it himself. Tony's prouder, you can't do it hard, you have to make him feel like he can make a difference. Hearing this sentence, Natasha Romanoff immediately took it to heart. Although the intelligence system of S.H.I.E.L.D. analyzed Tony Stark's character in person. But they don't know the simple and easy to understand method. After all, it was only a few days after Tony got the battle suit and was analyzed by S.H.I.E.L.D. The sky gradually darkened. Phil Coulson looked at his watch, checked the time, stood up and said, "It took a lot of time, thank you very much." Ivan waved his hand indifferently, "Just don't come often." Phil Coulson prepared to leave with an awkward smile. But right now, only Ivan's ear can hear the information report from the palace. Ivan commanded softly, "Unfold." Immediately, in front of Ivan, behind Phil Coulson, in front of Natasha Romanoff who has not had time to get up and leave. A translucent panel appears. This panel is the same as before, composed of Shingon pure manipulation of dark energy. These functions, although not Ivan's ability, can be implemented at will as long as they are within the dark energy barrier of the palace. Natasha Romanoff was at a loss for a moment. All her attention was drawn to the panel. Does S.H.I.E.L.D. have light curtain technology inside? Yes, definitely yes. But that is fixed and depends on the material. But what about Ivan's just summoned? On call. There is no real hardware support. That's too super powerful, isn't it? Phil Coulson was halfway there and found Natasha Romanoff not moving. He looked back to see what was wrong, but was stunned by the sight. This villa doesn't sound good. The agent of S.H.I.E.L.D. was scouted yesterday. No high tech. That table, that sofa, that roof, that floor Natasha Romanoff analyzed yesterday. Just normal furniture. How did this light curtain come about? High tech, or ability? If ability is okay, after all, this thing is very mysterious, and no one can figure it out. But if it's high tech, it's troublesome. Once this is really high tech, that shows that this is a technology level that far exceeds the number of years that the Earth does not know. So no matter what angle it is considered, Phil Coulson at the moment wished it was super ability. But the next change in the light curtain completely made him die. 99% of this is high tech. Ah, sigh. In a light curtain, the palace intelligence is directly displayed as a three-dimensional map in the air. And the location of the map is on a seaside street in New York. A voice that only Ivan could hear came to his mind. 30 seconds later, the lizard men will appear on Street 76 in New York. As predicted, a lizard and a mouse appeared along the entrance of the sewer. Immediately afterwards, swarms of small sewer animals began to climb out of the sewer entrances of the entire street. Passers-by who were afraid of these animals called out directly. Wait until they flee in groups. People who were not afraid of them also screamed out in fright. Anyone who sees a group of mice and lizards walking down the street will be startled. But that's not the point. After a while, the entrance to the sewer began to tremble. It was as if some heavy creature was passing underfoot. Eventually the tremor reached the drain next to the sea. Bang! After a loud bang, the iron fence flew out directly by shapeshifting. The crowd backed away in fright on the street. But there are still curious people who want to take a closer look. Wait until everyone takes a few steps forward. Haven't waited for the probe to look down. Kang! A huge amount of green mutant claws clung to the edge of the fence. Then a huge amount of lizard heads stretched out. Wait until it climbs up. Everyone discovered that its head was about the size of a tire. At least 2 meters tall and close to 3 meters. The crowd is really scared now. The crowd cried and shouted and ran around. Dr. Lizard, with green light in his eyes, saw this, and immediately stepped forward to wreak havoc. In another seaside villa, Natasha Romanoff and Phil Coulson saw this and stood up immediately. They don't care what the technology is like here. Phil Coulson confirmed the items on his body and immediately said to Ivan, "We have to go first." Ivan nodded, beckoning them to go. Before Natasha Romanoff followed and left, she suddenly thought of something and asked back, "Are you going to appear?" Ivan looked at the light curtain panel. "It depends." Natasha Romanoff nodded and trotted off immediately. All she had to do was know that Ivan wasn't not going. After all, this lizard man doesn't seem like an ordinary person to deal with. In case of emergency, the presence of Superman means that no matter how the scene is, it will not be bad. Phil Coulson drove the car with one hand. Press the headset with one hand and report to the general administration. Emergency, there is a supernatural emergency on 76th Street in New York, please send an agent to assist as soon as possible. Receive. Wait until Phil Coulson and Natasha Romanoff are gone. Ivan started slowly, and the controller panel rose. Look first where little Spider-Man is. Ivan waved his hand. Another smart light curtain appears next to it. While controlling a light curtain to stare at Street 76, Ivan controlled the new light curtain to call up the location and situation of Peter Parker at the moment. Alright, just add one more thing. Dark energy exists throughout the universe. That is to say, everything is within the detection range of dark energy in the entire palace. The dark matter engine in the palace can monitor the movement of the entire detection range through dark energy. This monitoring is like a 360-degree monitoring without dead ends. As long as it is within range, you can watch it from any angle you want. This detection technology is currently in the crushing stage on Earth. Definitely, this is just a reconnaissance scan range. It's like a radar. You can only see, not manipulate. If you manipulate dark energy like a light curtain, it must be within the barrier of dark energy. Unless Ivan has a dark plane engine, he doesn't need to be in this range and can control anywhere. Anyway, little Spider-Man at the moment is inside the Osborn building. He has already entered the interior of the laboratory through ventilation ducts through agile climbing techniques. It seems that although the plot develops according to the timeline, but his own influence will always be there. Regardless of the file size, the timeline and also the plot will be changed by Ivan's large and small file size. It was quite small before. Although this time is not big, but Peter Parker is not at the scene. Ivan waved off Peter Parker's God view. Look at Dr. Lizard again. The agent of S.H.I.E.L.D. is already heading there. Ivan continues to control the detective ability of the palace. This time to Tony Stark's laboratory. While investigating, Jarvis just started talking. Sir, there's a mutant lizard man invasion on 76th Street in New York. On Tony's high-tech panel, Jarvis hacked into the street surveillance directly and secretly, and then broadcast the surveillance live on Tony's computer panel. Tony wiped his chin when he saw this. Jarvis, will Superman go? Sir, I can't judge, I can only calculate, not guess. Okay, Tony sighed, but he looked at the laboratory in front of him. His Mark III armor had been dismantled and he was experimenting with new technology. But when this happened, he also had to terminate the experiment. Jarvis, assemble the armor. Sir, it may take half an hour, and some key parts need to be recovered before they can be used. Tony frowned. Try to hurry up. See here from God's perspective. Ivan shook his head helplessly. Half an hour. The day Lily was cold in half an hour. Take Dr. Lizard's lethality on the streets. And it's still in a place with a lot of traffic in New York. It can kill dozens of people in half an hour. And what about the S.H.I.E.L.D. agent of at the moment? Ivan shifted his perspective. Here comes Natasha Romanoff and Phil Coulson. Other agents also arrived. They were shooting at Dr. Lizard with light arms guns. Although Dr. Lizard can stop the bullet, it will be painful. But this is in the city, on the street. The angry Dr. Lizard went directly into the streets and alleys of the supermarket to fight with the agents. In a small space the agent has nothing to do. Only fearless casualties. And it's hard to do damage. But after a few seconds Dr. Lizard recovered. They fight in the streets, and the agents cannot use heavy weapons. They used stun guns and tranquilizer guns. But it was of no use to Dr. Lizard's resilient muscles and skin. See here, Ivan sighed inwardly. It seems that he still has to make a move. This social belief is just like what was given to him. Can increase the strength. 76th Street in New York. At the moment the cries, the gunshots, the collisions, and the shouts all joined together. The people shopping in the street were running around like crazy. New York police, at the moment, also arrived here. Together with the S.H.I.E.L.D. agent, they fired at Dr. Lizard. But after more than 10 minutes of fighting, the other party was not injured at all, but the police lost several policemen. Shit, Officer George scolded. His anger was now unbearable. The previous Superman incident was heavenly compared to this one. Superman is there to help the citizens. Although this makes people think the NYC police are useless, it's also way better than this lizard man. When this happens, and so many people die, the entire police force in New York will be affected. Not to mention the police chief. More importantly, George is a good police officer, and he doesn't want to see so many people die. Call. George sighed angrily. At the moment how he wished Superman would come. Even in his heart, he was already begging for Superman to come. Please, don't let more people die. The other side. Natasha Romanoff and Phil Coulson are also struggling with Dr. Lizard. But what's the use of it? The guns on them are of no use to it. While the lizard men were chasing the Phil Coulson agent, Natasha Romanoff stood up, raised the pistol, aimed at Dr. Lizard's eyes and pulled the trigger. Boom. A shot was fired. Dr. Lizard's eyes suddenly shot a blood flower. Roar. Dr. Lizard covered his eyes in pain. His body can withstand bullets, but his eyes certainly can't. Dr. Lizard looked around with the other eye. It turned to think. He immediately lowered his head and rushed towards the opponent. Natasha Romanoff saw this, firing several shots in a row. But Dr. Lizard was already prepared and could not hit the eye at all. Phil Coulson, who got out of trouble, saw this, and immediately raised his gun and shot it in the back of the lizard man. Boom, 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 boom. He fired several shots, but the lizard men decided that Natasha Romanoff, who had found its weakness, rushed straight over. Natasha Romanoff couldn't run away. She threw the pistol and bit her silver teeth. He took out the dagger and metal rope in his tight battle suit and rushed towards the lizard men. Just before the two meet, Natasha Romanoff slid a shovel under the lizard folk. Then he immediately stood up and jumped on the lizard man's neck. A metal rope strangles his neck. The dagger slammed directly into its eye socket. Roar. The lizard man struggled in pain. It grabbed back with its big hands, grabbed Natasha Romanoff by the shoulders, and threw her out. Bang. Natasha Romanoff slammed into a wall and slowly slid down. Cough. After a few hard coughs, Natasha Romanoff's face was ugly. Just like that, she was about to lose her fighting power. It is estimated that if you fight again, you can only run and not fight like before. But Natasha Romanoff is also sure. The dagger she had just now should have been inserted into the lizard man's brain. If nothing else happens, that is to be unexpected. In the eyes of Natasha Romanoff, Phil Coulson and a host of agents and police. Lizard man pulled out the dagger from his eye socket. Then he threw down the metal rope tied around his neck. Immediately after, under the watchful eyes of the crowd, its eye sockets began to slowly repair, and gradually grew until it seemed like nothing had happened. What? Everyone's eyes widened. What is this so special? After being opened, it will be put into the brain for a while to recover. It's troublesome. Natasha Romanoff struggled to prop herself up with her hands. Her face was really distressed. If it goes on like this, New York will lose. Without supernatural combat power, ordinary people cannot defeat the lizardmen. Even Natasha Romanoff has been strengthened. But the lizard people's physical fitness is far beyond the normal range. Natasha Romanoff's head calculated, who in New York can currently defeat the lizardmen? Spider-Man. Not sure, there is no combat stats and physical stats for him in supernatural combat power. Iron Man. It might work, but S.H.I.E.L.D. at the moment doesn't know yet how effective the Mark III will be in Afghanistan. It's more than enough to take out the lizardmen and defend against shells and destroy tanks casually. Then there is the last one left. Superman, Ivan. This Natasha Romanoff can be sure that the lizardmen in front of him were crushed casually. But, Superman said it depends on the situation. If the current situation is not enough, everyone wants to G. Next moment, after Dr. Lizard recovered, it glanced at Natasha Romanoff, who had done him the most damage. Immediately it took a step and rushed towards Natasha Romanoff. Shet. Natasha Romanoff muttered a curse. Then limped to the side. Until the moment of final death, as long as there is a silver lining, the agents will not sit still. But Dr. Lizard was running much faster than she could limp. Natasha Romanoff walked around the iron cabinet and the chest door, trying to stall for an opportunity. However, Dr. Lizard relied on his good physical fitness, and rushed straight ahead. Bang! Natasha Romanoff pushed open the last door in front of him and closed it again. The next moment, boom, she was knocked out by Dr. Lizard, who rushed out. Cough cough, lie down on the street floor. Natasha Romanoff waved to those who had not fled not far away. Everyone was shocked when they saw Dr. Lizard walking out of the street, and they all ran up immediately. Bang, 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 bang. The lizard folk took heavy steps, walking towards Natasha Romanoff like a talisman. Natasha Romanoff wanted to stand up, but the internal injuries from the consecutive collisions had left her with little strength and vitality. The lizard man smiled cruelly. It reached out and slowly grabbed Natasha Romanoff, who fell to the ground. Natasha Romanoff pulled out her only weapon, even though she knew it wouldn't work. But she is Black Widow, not one to sit still. Next moment, a golden light descended from the sky, as if to divide the world before Natasha Romanoff's eyes. With a dazzling light filled the field of vision. She seemed to see a big green hand with claws flying out completely. No matter how good Dr. Lizard's physique is, it can't be compared to the hot side of Ivan's strengthening. The original heat sight is still red. Before launching, it will turn red in Ivan's eyes, making people feel that the temperature is very high. But the hot sight after strengthening has turned into a dazzling golden color. This golden color becomes a symbol of nobility and can never be matched. Definitely, the power is also more than a section. Dr. Lizard was also stunned. In his green eyes, first, a golden light seemed to cross the sky. Then my arm gets hot. Gone. Pat. When the nearly 1 meter long forearm fell to the ground, it was still twisting and grasping as if it were intact. Dr. Lizard looked at his arm. Granulation squirms on the muscle. But it just can't grow. When looking carefully, it was only found that the granulation was not unable to grow, but that the growth rate was very slow, which was much slower than the normal rate. Until the granulation slowly grows out, the recovery rate of Dr. Lizard's broken limb reborn became normal. Roar. Dr. Lizard roared and looked at the light shot down. But the next moment, bang, a storm of condensed air slammed into it fiercely. Immediately, Dr. Lizard's body of 2 or 3 meters flew upside down like a rag and smashed into the phone booth. So far, the figure of Ivan wearing a black super battle suit slowly fell. As if the tragic end of Dr. Lizard was not his fault. However, he only used 2 abilities in those 2 blows just now. Hot sight, Navy 6 style lantern feet. Natasha Romanoff sat on the ground with her hands propped up. She took a few breaths before looking at Ivan's breathless expression. A little later, your exclusive beauty liaison will be gone. Ivan laughed. You are not alone in the beauty of S.H.I.E.L.D. Immediately, Natasha Romanoff glared at Ivan with her teeth biting her lip when she heard this. Roar. Dr. Lizard, who had been hanging around for a long time, made a sound at the moment. It struggled to its feet from the broken phone booth. Then stared at Ivan with those green eyes. Ivan also watched with interest what it thought. After half a sound, Dr. Lizard kicked 1 foot back. Then turn around and flee to the nearest seaside sewer. Ivan, this operation works a bit. Ivan turned his head and looked at the stunned Natasha Romanoff. Natasha Romanoff reached out slowly and gave Ivan a thumbs up. They fought for a long time and were almost wiped out. As a result, Ivan came up with a kick, and it ran away. We New York police and S.H.I.E.L.D. agents don't want to lose face. Are you double standard like this? Can you play a fight with Superman? This picture was taken by passers-by. What if we upload it to the internet? What else can be done? Get scolded. Ivan shrugged helplessly and flew over in an instant. But when he flew into the alley, Dr. Lizard was already drilling into the sewer, leaving only the last tail and leg left outside. Z. A golden light lit up. A golden light instantly cut through. Next moment, Dr. Lizard snorted, got into the sewer and ran. Can Ivan catch up? Definitely catch up, but whoever likes to drill in this sewer, he doesn't drill anyway. After a while, NYPD, S.H.I.E.L.D. agent, Phil Coulson, Natasha Romanoff all got here. Everyone can guess the situation by looking at the big tail and feet on the ground. Ivan signaled that the location where it escaped was this sewer. Phil Coulson nodded knowingly. Go with Chief George and instruct the police and agents under his command to block the scene. After a while, Phil Coulson agent walked back. By the way, there was Chief George who hurried behind him. Seeing that Superman was still here, he came back in such a hurry because he was afraid that Superman would leave first. He still has something to say. Chief George asked before he got close. Mr. Superman, what should we do with this lizard man? Before asking this question, George actually wanted to ask who Ivan was. Or other details. But when he saw that Ivan was surrounded by SHIELD agents with the highest national security level, George dismissed the idea. Ivan turned to look at him. Just do what your police station should do. George nodded and stopped asking. Phil Coulson looked a little bitter on the side. Our conventional forces couldn't handle it, and Natasha Romanoff came close too. I see. Ivan interrupts Phil Coulson's complaint. He knew what Phil Coulson meant. Probably. SHIELD is weak and has no combat power. What should I do in the future? Superman, look, your beauty exclusive liaison almost got G. What to do in the future? You have an idea. Or you have a solution. We don't have a single SHIELD's superhero. Ivan turned his head and looked at Natasha Romanoff, who was leaning against the wall and suffering from internal injuries. Natasha Romanoff tilted her head and made a question mark for unknown reasons. Ivan stepped forward and patted Natasha Romanoff on the shoulder softly. Come to my house later. Natasha Romanoff. Ivan's voice was not too loud when he said this. And Phil Coulson just walked away. So only Natasha Romanoff knows. Immediately, even Natasha Romanoff, who doesn't know what to do at the moment, was stunned. She didn't know what Ivan meant. What's the meaning? Did I go to dedicate myself before Ivan agreed to join SHIELD? When I think of Ivan's identity, figure, strength, appearance. Anyway, Natasha Romanoff feels that he is not at a loss. Even a little profit. Ivan didn't say much, also didn't know what was going through Natasha Romanoff's mind at the moment. He just took off to leave. Results rang out with tearing air sounds. A steel figure with red and yellow hands and feet spraying energy followed. He looked at the scene, a little depressed. Did I come a little late? After Tony Stark arrived, he did not take off the mask of the armor. At the moment, for various reasons, there are Obadiah, there are small peppers, and all kinds of reasons. As a result, proud people like Tony Stark did not reveal their identity for the first time. You came a little late. At this point, Phil Coulson, who had already met Tony Stark, greeted him. All right. Tony's regretful voice came from his visor. But he turned his head to look at Ivan and was surprised again. Phil Coulson, make sure to give me a copy of the fight video later. Okay. Phil Coulson nodded. As for Chief George, he's already taken aback. There are all kinds of people in New York these days. More than one Tin Man is nothing. Ivan slowly flew to the sky. Then came to Tony's side and used super see-through. Through the surface and flesh of the warframe. Ivan had seen those tiny palladiums flowing in Tony's veins. It's just that the dose is not obvious now, and it can't do a physiological response. Ivan flew forward and patted Tony on the shoulder, whispering beside him earnestly. There is no solution to the physical harm of palladium to normal people. Be careful! Exclamation mark. Hear this. Tony Stark's eyes widened in the armor. He didn't expect that they had only met twice. It didn't take long before Ivan knew that the palladium element he was used as a power source for cold nuclear fusion. And this danger was foreseen in advance. In fact, Tony didn't expect this. He was also immersed in the joy of the technological breakthrough of the armor. I haven't thought of the side effects of palladium poisoning that will cause a particularly painful death. A thought here. Tony Stark hurriedly asked JARVIS in his armor. JARVIS, the operation of the arc reactor will poison me with palladium. Sir, if you want to know about this, you need to go home and do a full analysis scan. All right. Tony Stark took a few deep breaths. He eased his head, his tone a little heavy. Thank you, I'll do a good check when I go back. You are welcome. I have something to do, I have to go first. Ivan waved his hand and left first. Tony nodded, he also wanted to go back early for a checkup. Immediately after Ivan left, he also left. Natasha Romanoff and Phil Coulson were a little bit confused under their feet. What did they both say just now? Why did Tony leave in such a hurry? The two do not know, and have no time to understand. After watching the two leave, Phil Coulson looked around, and sighed at the cluttered scene of several streets. They are the Homeland Strategic Defense Offensive and Logistics Service. Literally, today's events are inseparable from them. Ah, Phil Coulson still had a slight smile on his face, but he sighed inwardly. When will SHIELD have high-end combat power? Superman can't win over temporarily. They also know that they are not qualified. What about Tony Stark? Can try, but who to call? Natasha Romanoff. No, Natasha Romanoff is now Ivan's dedicated liaison. Think with your ass. They also wouldn't let Natasha Romanoff get close to Starks. Who else is there? Think about it. Phil Coulson had to go back and talk to director Nick Fury. I looked around and there was nothing left but to clean the battlefield. They don't need to do this kind of thing yet. All they have to do now is to go back and report immediately. Thought here. Phil Coulson finds Natasha Romanoff still thinking in place. Go back in. Director Nick Fury is still waiting for us. Natasha Romanoff lowered her head, her eyes dodging slightly. But the next moment, she raised her head and resumed her Black Widow appearance as Phil Coulson said. I still have something to do, I have to go back later. Phil Coulson was silent for a moment, then nodded and walked away. The higher the agent of S.H.I.E.L.D., the more freedom it has to act. For example, both of them are level 9 agents. Well, unless director Nick Fury ordered them directly. Otherwise, the 9-level agent can act according to its own plan first. Natasha Romanoff is like that right now. However, agents rarely use this power. Now, Natasha Romanoff has expectations and unknowns in her heart, and walks towards Ivan's house uneasy. The other side. When Tony got home, he flew straight into the lab. Remove the full body armor on the manipulator's workbench. Tony came to the scanner for the first time to start a full body examination for himself. JARVIS, start checking. Okay, sir, this may take some time. After a while, Tony picked up the inspection report nervously. At a glance, after seeing the test results, his face turned black. Sir, preliminary analysis shows that the reason for the poisoning is because the palladium arc reactor is buried in your chest, so as long as the power of the arc reactor is higher, you will be poisoned faster. Tony's face was a little ugly. He reached out and rubbed his chin. Is there any solution? No, sir, there is currently no case of palladium poisoning on Earth, that is, there is no solution. After scanning and calculating, I found that there is only a way to alleviate it. What is it? Drinking vegetable juice. It relieves the palladium level in your body, but it doesn't dilute it. A long time. Tony sighed. He stood up and rubbed his cheek to cheer himself up. You're Tony Stark, genius, you can do it. Since there is no cure in the world, let me study the cure. What's the big deal? It's a big deal to find a new element that can replace the arc reactor, and it's a big deal to find a medicine that can filter the palladium element. Even though he said that, just by looking at Tony's expression, you can tell that this is a huge difficulty. The dilution of palladium has never been studied at all. He's going to start from scratch. Not to mention a new element that can replace the arc reactor. This is simply an impossible thing. Bang! Tony slapped the table feebly and kicked himself back in the chair. Pat! But as the chair slid back, a plastic package of medicine fell to the ground. Tony looked at it and suddenly thought of something. This is the last time the magic engine was driven. The bottle of medicine Tony remembered. Something that was driving in the magic engine that day. But since there was no writing or instructions on the package, Tony just left it on the table. Get up from the chair. Tony stepped forward and took it in his hand. Then shook. Wow, there was a crashing sound of pills inside. Tony opened the bottle cap. There were actually 3 simple, pure white-colored tablets inside. Tony poured it out in confusion and sniffed it. Fortunately, it is not colorless and odorless. Instead, it has a refreshing aroma of fruits and vegetables. Candy. Tony made a random guess, definitely joking. He didn't take a pill right away to try it. Just kidding, this looks like medicine, how can you eat it indiscriminately? Think about it. Tony took out a pill and placed it on the clean scanner. Let me see what you are. Sir, reverse the unknown drug ingredients and effects, which may take a lot of time. Then analyze its function first. Okay, sir. The screen turns around. At the moment Ivan has returned home. And lay on the sofa and rested leisurely. The moonlight at night shines through the floor-to-ceiling windows in the living room, which is elegant and mysterious. After a while, a smart voice came from the door. Welcome, Natasha Romanoff. Click. With the sound of the door opening, Ivan turned his head slowly and saw Natasha Romanoff walking uncomfortably in his combat tights. Especially when Ivan looks past With his eyesight, he even saw Natasha Romanoff's slender legs clenched slightly. At the same time, with Ivan's super brain, he immediately thought of why. It turned out that she had misunderstood her tone at the time. Interesting. Ivan's mouth curled into a smile. Then tease her. Ivan smiled and reached out to pat the sofa beside him. In the past, whoever came, Ivan let them sit on the sofa. But this 2-meter-long sofa is long enough for people to lie down on. Only Ivan can sit, but now Ivan let her sit next to him. Immediately, Natasha Romanoff, as an agent, also discovered this detail. But she couldn't refuse. After walking next to Ivan, Natasha Romanoff sat down calmly next to Ivan. Next moment, Ivan's head lifted and rested directly on Natasha Romanoff's lap. Black Widow shuddered. He looked down at Ivan under him. Although only half of his face can be seen, it is still as perfect as Jeonmei Shingmu. Obviously just a young high school student. But Natasha Romanoff's body trembled at the thought of his real identity as Superman. This is more powerful than Hulk. But the good news is that Ivan's ability is completely controllable, not as uncontrollable as Hulk. At this time, Natasha Romanoff carefully looked down at Ivan lying on his lap. The moonlight shone on the two of them. Ivan's face and body shone with radiance that was as charming as picking a fairy. Both the temperament and the appearance are impeccable. As if it were the most perfect masterpiece of the creator. But looking at Ivan here, to be honest, the experience is not very good, it can only be good. Because Ivan asked her to come, so Natasha Romanoff came directly and smelled blood. And there is the smell of dust hitting the wall and falling to the ground. If you really say something good, then only the lap pillow is pretty good. No way, ordinary people shouldn't be able to smell it. But who is Ivan's physique? All 5 senses were sharpened. After lying down for a while, Ivan is also a little tired. Natasha Romanoff straightened up as Natasha Romanoff pursed his lips slightly. Just when Natasha Romanoff thought it was about to start. Slap. Ivan snapped his fingers. Suddenly, 3 blue magic engines appeared on the table in front of the sofa. Their blue glow instantly covered the moonlight, and the whole living room is covered with a layer of delicate and mysterious brilliance. Natasha Romanoff was dumbfounded. She might not have changed her mind for a while. Looking at the 3 mysterious blue magic engines in front of her, countless thoughts flashed in her mind. But the next moment she stopped thinking and only looked at the man in front of her. Because she knows, helpless what she was thinking now, it was Ivan who finally made the decision to tell her. Looking at Natasha Romanoff's eyes gradually clearing, Ivan nodded with satisfaction and began to introduce. These 3 are called magic engines, open them, and you can get any rewards randomly. Natasha Romanoff only opened her eyes slightly when she heard this. Maybe she's still not clear about any rewards here. Ivan gave an example. Any reward from the universe, Tony Stark, Bruce Banner, Peter Parker have opened it, now you understand. What? This time Natasha Romanoff really couldn't help but speak up. The 3 Ivan mentioned just now are all super ability users recorded by S.H.I.E.L.D. But all 3 were actually helped by Ivan. And also turned on the magic engine. Natasha Romanoff's brain recalled frantically. Tony Stark expressed that he had been helped by others and had been looking for Superman. Peter Parker said that all his abilities were taught by Ivan, and both teachers and friends are very grateful to him. Although Bruce Banner didn't say anything, according to the S.H.I.E.L.D. agent's reconnaissance information, he hasn't suddenly turned into Hulk recently. That is to say, not only Ivan's own help, and the unknown magic engine also helped them. My goodness, the thought of this made Natasha Romanoff go numb. Ivan's words were both a surprise and a pressure to her. Because she knows that this has touched the core information. And when faced with this situation, Natasha Romanoff already knew what to do. Either promise or. The answer is fine for Natasha Romanoff, but she knows that delicious cakes don't go in vain, so she needs to think about the conditions. Breathe out slowly, Natasha Romanoff asked softly, looking at Ivan who was waiting for her answer. What's the price? Look at the mature and intellectual Natasha Romanoff. Ivan nodded in satisfaction. Part of the reason he had a crush on Natasha Romanoff was that she was smart and knew what she needed and what she had to give. Ivan held up 3 fingers. 1. You can never betray me until I am not against you. 2. If the reward I give you in the future is greater than S.H.I.E.L.D., you need to listen to me first. 3. Ivan thought about it. The first 2 points are actually enough. Fortunately, after hitting the big stick at the third point, let's have a sweet date. 3. As long as the above 2 points are not violated, you can do whatever you want by my side. After these 3 points, Ivan stopped talking, just looked at Natasha Romanoff silently, waiting for her response. Natasha Romanoff was clearly thinking too. The first point is that Natasha Romanoff thinks that he is not willing to stand on the opposite side of Ivan. It will be an extremely terrifying end, let alone betray. Number 2, this is where Natasha Romanoff hesitation comes in. S.H.I.E.L.D. treats her well, it is a place to discover her and cultivate her. Definitely, Natasha Romanoff also knows that S.H.I.E.L.D. pulls her for other reasons. As one of the top combat powers among normal humans in terms of intelligence and strength in the future, S.H.I.E.L.D. could not let a talent like Natasha Romanoff not be used by him. If you promise Ivan. The content of the second paragraph does not seem to be too much. Ivan neither let Natasha Romanoff betray S.H.I.E.L.D. nor let her be a mole or something. He just said that if he treats himself well in the future, S.H.I.E.L.D. Then just listen to Ivan first. As for the third point, isn't that a free bonus? Thinking of this, Natasha Romanoff raised her head, her eyes gradually firming. Ivan knew it was done when he saw this. Reached out and picked up a bottle of wine and gave it to her, agreed. Do I still have a choice? Natasha Romanoff rolled Ivan's eyes, took the wine and gulped it down until he drank it in one breath. Bang! Put the bottle on the table. Natasha Romanoff looked at Ivan, then at the 3 striking magical engines on the table. Ivan spread his right hand, motioning her to open freely. Then he walked to the sofa and lay down halfway to watch. Transaction complete. Listen to the system prompts. This is also the condition that Ivan dared to put forward, these obviously only verbal conditions. He doesn't have to worry about whether Natasha Romanoff is lying, as long as she agrees, this transaction condition must be established. This is one of the reasons why Ivan is relieved. Pick up the magic engine with Natasha Romanoff. The blue light in the living room also flickered. In the living room where only the moonlight shines in, the cool blue light is rather ambiguous. Stroking the blue magic engine. Natasha Romanoff turned around and glanced at Ivan. Ivan nodded. Open it. After hearing this, Natasha Romanoff felt confident as if she had a backbone. She immediately turned on the magic engine. Suddenly, a dazzling blue light flooded the entire living room. Natasha Romanoff didn't get used to the light in the dimness and covered her eyes with her hands. After a while, the blue mysterious energy in the magic engine has gathered. Finally, the dazzling blue light gradually dimmed. Natasha Romanoff lowered her arm and looked back at the magic engine. At the moment's magic engine, a skill card appears. And at the moment when the skill card appeared, Ivan didn't need to read the system introduction. As soon as he saw the pattern on the card, he knew what skill it was. Clearness after use, restores the same total energy, mana, and stamina to allies or designated targets within the range. Not bad ability. This ability is good for normal superhero. But only so for Ivan. Because after having the body of the sun, his physical strength is almost continuous, and even if the physical strength recovery is interrupted, it will take a long time to use up. But Natasha Romanoff used it just fine. Just crush it, Ivan said. Hear what Ivan has to say. Natasha Romanoff picked up the card and crushed it lightly. Suddenly, the card shattered into starlight and entered Natasha Romanoff's body. At the same time, the use of this skill also appeared in Natasha Romanoff's mind. Use it for yourself. Natasha Romanoff nodded, silently using clearness in his heart. A ray of light fell on her and Ivan. Ivan felt that there was no change, but his body cooled down a bit. But Natasha Romanoff has changed quite a bit. During the night battle with the lizardmen, Natasha Romanoff was injured a little, and was physically exhausted, and the muscles were in a sore phase. But after using this clear technique, the wound is definitely still there, and clarity has no healing ability. However, physical exhaustion, mental exhaustion, and muscle fatigue and soreness have almost returned to normal. There are even some invigorating effects. Natasha Romanoff was very happy in her heart, and she kept smiling in reality. This ability is equivalent to the agent's reserve hidden energy. Once you are stuck in a stalemate and exhausted stage, it is very useful. Watching Natasha Romanoff rejoice, Ivan smiled helplessly and reminded. 2 more, Natasha Romanoff. Natasha Romanoff came to his senses and quickly picked up the second one to open. She looks a lot like Ivan. Clean and neat, not at all sloppy. After getting the magic engine, Natasha Romanoff turned it on immediately. Suddenly, the blue light shines again. This time Natasha Romanoff had settled in and kept his eyes on the top of the engine. Wait until the reward appears. A scroll appears above the engine. Ivan also got a bonus introduction in his mind. After reading the introduction, Ivan said with a smile. This ability is for you, Natasha Romanoff. Suit myself. Natasha Romanoff reached for the scroll and spread it out. After opening the scroll, there are a lot of fonts on it that she doesn't recognize. She can only roughly understand the meaning of the poses of some characters. What is this? Natasha Romanoff asked. An inheritance. Ivan didn't want to introduce too much, and directly told her how to use it. This is the inheritance of the ability of a martial arts master. Bite your finger and put a drop of blood on it. But this is no ordinary martial arts master ability inheritance. Shang-Chi Martial Arts Master Scroll. You will become one of the greatest martial artists on the planet, and become a martial arts master by mastering gymnastics ability, taijutsu ability, cold weapon ability and neural response ability. After doing what Ivan said, Natasha Romanoff pressed his own blood to the scroll. Immediately, the fonts and martial arts patterns on the scroll began to glow. Gradually they twisted on the reels as if they were alive. Then, the fonts and patterns start to wander on the scrolls. They still move, and to the position of Natasha Romanoff's hand holding the scroll. Natasha Romanoff wants to put down the scroll, but she thought about it and turned to look at Ivan. She was smart, and Natasha Romanoff remembered that she had agreed to Ivan's terms so that Ivan would not hurt herself. Sure enough, after seeing Ivan looking at him with interest, Natasha Romanoff was completely relieved, and let the font on the scroll run up to her. The font was moved to Natasha Romanoff's hands. Start moving towards her heart. Ivan turned on super see-through and saw the fonts move directly through Natasha Romanoff's clothes. After these fonts reached Natasha Romanoff's heart, they were all buried in and disappeared. Ivan closes super perspective. Look at Natasha Romanoff who just closed her eyes. Apparently she's getting a legacy. Ivan waited silently. I don't know how long it took. Natasha Romanoff opened her eyes suddenly. At the same time, there seemed to be a gleam of light shining from her eyes. Then Natasha Romanoff stood up in surprise. She couldn't wait to come to the empty space of the living room, and then began to cast her fists. With a punch, the wind in the living room was slightly blown by the belt. It swept away, as if a strong wind suddenly blew. Immediately after, Natasha Romanoff began to swing the pose. These poses are exactly the patterns of the swinging figures on the scrolls. Ivan watched. Natasha Romanoff is like dancing to show his dance level, showing all kinds of poses that ordinary people can't do. In this way, one person offers martial arts and one person watches. After a while, as Natasha Romanoff lowered the high raised leg, clap, Ivan clapped and smiled and said, if I wait a while, my living room will have to be cleaned tomorrow. Just for a little while. The lighter items in Ivan's living room were blown all over the place. I didn't know that. I thought there was a war here. Natasha Romanoff had a happy smile on her face and she was clearly in a very good mood at the moment. I'll clean it up for you. Yes, Ivan said with a teasing smile. The 9th level agent, codenamed Black Widow, will do the cleaning for me personally. I'm definitely willing. Where? Black Widow winked at Ivan. It's my honor to sanitize my Superman Ivan. Ha ha ha. Ivan laughed out loud watching Natasha Romanoff having fun with herself. This is the friend or subordinate he wants. What does Mumu mean? It is interesting to be mature, intellectual, intelligent, and individual. Natasha Romanoff's affection for Ivan also exploded at the moment. If the previous performance to a word of their own heart, 40% of them are sincere performances, because Ivan is very good looking and handsome, which makes Natasha Romanoff willing. But 60% is actually Natasha Romanoff's fear of Ivan's strength. She was afraid that Ivan was too young to control her ability. She was afraid that if Ivan had no bottom line, he would do whatever he wanted. But now, she understands. Ivan is not only smart, bottom line, mature and handsome. He is also someone who is very willing to let people take the initiative to get along and want to stay by his side. From personal experience over the past few days, Natasha Romanoff felt extremely relieved and comfortable around Ivan, as if both body and mind were purified. I want people to take the initiative to stay by his side. Again, say something realistic. Natasha Romanoff believes that her previous goodwill towards Ivan was due to internal and external spiritual reasons. But it's different now, after getting the inheritance of Shang-Chi martial arts master. This is a real ability and a real benefit. Natasha Romanoff preliminarily estimated that the ability of this martial arts master directly multiplied his combat ability several times. So let's be realistic. The combination of all the advantages of the above summary makes Natasha Romanoff now very interested in Ivan. It's so realistic. Then, watching Natasha Romanoff come back to herself, Ivan raised his chin, signaling there was one last magic engine. Natasha Romanoff nodded, but didn't immediately go for the magic engine. She catwalked to Ivan's side. Look at Ivan leaning on the sofa. She reached out and, at Ivan's funny gaze, lifted his chin and bit it lightly. At the same time in this process, she kept eye contact with Ivan. Don't close your eyes like a little girl. I have to admit, her charming eyes are really pretty. Score at the touch of a button. This is your reward too. Natasha Romanoff put his hands away, turned around and went back to get the last magic engine. It was as if Ivan had just finished chatting with her enthusiastically on the day of revenge and drove her away. Look at the increasingly presumptuous Natasha Romanoff. Ivan, who hadn't even considered right or wrong in the first two, suddenly wondered if the third condition was right or not. Ivan reluctantly wiped the lip print on the corner of his mouth. What a stray cat. Done. The living room lit up again with a bright blue light. Natasha Romanoff turns on the last magic engine. As the mysterious blue energy converges, the final rendering on the engine. Is it a template? Ivan wiped his lips clean and his face brightened. There's nothing rubbish about templates. But then again, only Ivan can integrate templates and load countless templates. Even if other people open the template, the upper limit can only load one. And this template from Natasha Romanoff. Ivan looked at the system introduction. When he saw it, he was still stunned. Coincidence. Template Storm Girl from the Black Robe Picket Team. After loading this template and training, you will gradually have all the abilities of Storm Girl. These include but are not limited to strengthening physical fitness, strengthening self-healing ability, strengthening reaction speed, flight, controlling lightning, etc. I hope everyone will support it and subscribe more.